right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:30. Thank you for your prompt arrival, and we do have a quorum. And as usual, we are recording tonight for Community Access Channel. I just want to preface the start of the meeting with just a couple of comments here as it relates to sort of administrative. I've never viewed myself as a micromanager, but I think I kind of have to put that in play tonight. And admittedly, you've all been very cooperative from day one up until this point. But as you've seen from the agenda, as you've seen from the presentation that was sent out, as you've seen from my email after the last meeting, and those of you who either attended or watched or listened to the public forum, we have a lot of things to talk about tonight. The potential to make several votes. We have things to talk about that we haven't talked about before. Everything's been put on the agenda, but there are some new items obviously there that we need to discuss. So having said that, there may be many questions, many comments from each and every one of you, and I want to make sure that those get heard and responded to in due course. So I'm going to ask that everybody, if they want to speak, please raise your hand, wait to be recognized, and I'll do that and try to take you in the order as you show your hand. And if you'd also please refrain from any sidebar conversations with your neighbors, because that's very distracting to those presenting and those around you who are trying to focus on what's being said. So I really think that's important to stress that with tonight's meeting, if we want to get through this agenda and see where we end up. I'm also going to note that once we get through basically everything under the designer update, the work plan, Howard, wastewater, all the discussions about all the options, before we get into item 3 on potential votes, I am going to call for probably about a 10-minute recess. Because I think that's a good opportunity for just to kick back and absorb what you've heard up to that point. It's a good opportunity to caucus amongst yourselves about what you're listening to and bounce ideas or questions or concerns off each other. I think that's healthy as a formal sidebar, if you will. So at least 10, maybe 15 minutes, depending on time, to do that before we come back and into a formal session to potentially take any votes that may present themselves. So any questions on that? Any of that? All right, great, thank you. So first order of business is the approval of the March 25th meeting minutes, previously distributed.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? So voted. And thank you again, Debbie. Appreciate it. Mitch.
Thanks. First thing we usually talk about is invoices. We have no update at this time, no invoices since the last meeting, so it's all of that for today, and then hand it over to the design team.
Okay, and just quickly, Kathy, nothing on your end
No,
to be raised. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Arrow, yep. Okay, so as we always, James isn't here tonight. It's one of his kids' birthdays. So we said, you better go home. So we're going to sort of the similar, we have past meetings we've had. And I think, Gary, you've done a good job of outlining all the discussion we're going to have tonight regarding first the Howard School site, wastewater treatment plants, new versus ad reno. This is a possible vote. We can talk about that. And review options with costs. So we're coming back to you with costs of the variance A, B, C of our options and explanation about that. So again, not to repeat ourselves, potential votes. With the last one being approval to submit to the MSBA. If we aren't able to get through this tonight, potential for another meeting. So the Howard School site that was mostly spoken about in October and November of last year when we voted to proceed with the Rose L site by unanimous vote of this committee. We're going to kind of go through these quickly, and you've had the documents before you. We treated the Howard site just as we did the Roselle site, looking at different options, so PK4 and new and add reno. We had different footprints. We had lists of advantages and disadvantages for the various options, highlighting some things about the impact on the town septic or the crowdedness of the site with multiple populations on the site and circulation and traffic and parking and things like that. 1 through 6, back in the day when we had a 1 through 6. Similar concerns were brought up, like pre-K6 option on site. We compared these footprints of the boxes were the same, again, that we've been showing on Rose L. Pre-K6 was deemed at that point, it was the largest building and also would be the most impactful in terms of septic, as the town septic would be impacted on that site. Ad reno, we showed this slide, and again, we had a similar slide for Roselle, which sort of talked about the various attributes of the site and what was happening on the site. We looked at the potential vote, and this is the meeting that we did vote, and one distinction here was if a vote were to go on Howard, it was also making the grade structure decision at that point in time. This information was shared. We reviewed the site overall and the different options related to it and came to a decision to move to Rose L. We have been asked to say, would a pre-K6 fit on Howard today? The answer is yes. I will couch that we never said it didn't fit on the site. We talked about all that was happening on the site. And again, there was a lot of good feedback from everyone here, talking about impact on council and aging, talking about impact on traffic, concerns around the town septic system and what would happen there. So this is showing a few things, again with our best of our knowledge today, because this site has not been further looked at since November. So all the study and all the work and all the money that you have spent has been on the Roselle site for survey, for geotechnical, for geoenvironmental, for perk tests and borings. All of that has been on one site and not this site. So we do not have any of that information. At a very high level, we would identify the northeast corner for a new wastewater treatment plant. Again, not a simple just pick it up and move it. It would be a new wastewater treatment plant. All the lines that are coming from all these other buildings would need to be rerouted. Don't know where they are, don't know how that would happen. Looking at other areas that have been in question of if they're truly wet areas or truly wetland kind of areas or just wet. Can you see on our screen the blue dashed lines? So the blue circle, is there a pointer on this one?
Yeah.
Which, the middle?
Triggering back there.
Trigger back there.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So this one, I think everyone agrees is wet. It's with a circle around it. We've been talking about, we've heard about this, we've heard about this, we've heard about this. We don't know anything about them right now. We can't speak to it. We don't know. Some are saying a lot of it is man-made, but I've certainly witnessed when something's man-made and then you go to look at it 5 years later and there's little creatures growing in there, it becomes wetlands. It's no longer man-made. So there's concerns, awareness of all of that. So again, we've done this because we were asked to, but our understanding as a committee is we've moved away from the Howard site. Now, we can appreciate that when we did that, we didn't know about additional wetlands over at Roselle, and it has made challenges on the Roselle site. We, as a group, made the decision with all the information we had in our hand at that time available in the study, up to that, 4 months of study, that we were able to, make the decision with. I think there's a pause here. Any questions on Howard?
Do you want to review that?
Passed.
The schedule impacts before?
Oh, yes, my friend, sorry. That's your slide, that's
You
why
can
I...
just click forward if you want.
Yes.
Sorry.
So in addition to what Lori was just mentioning about the Howard site, we also wanted to look at the schedule impacts, A, from a design impact, B, from a schedule impact. So the MSBA has certain board dates, and they only hold those board dates at certain times. So on the top of the slide, you'll see our current schedule. Each box corresponds with the timeline on the bottom, which would be the pushed-out schedule. This was to move forward. So there'd be about a 3 or 4 month delay on the design, resulting in a schedule impact of about 4 or 5 months. And the design cost impact is anywhere between $300,000 to $350,000. And then in addition to that, we just have a number here for the wastewater treatment plant costs, which is about $6 million, because this would now incorporate all of the other buildings that are on the existing septic on Howard. Yep.
So we're absolutely sure that we would need a wastewater treatment plant on Howard? Because we currently have a variance, right? So would we not be able to get a variance to tie Rose, or to tie the new school into that septic system?
I'm not aware that your current septic system was done under a variance. It's under a variance, okay?
So were you aware that a variance would be available to us?
For
When you
how-
presented Howard, yeah.
No.
No.
No. Our understanding at the moment is it's still not a given. We have been speaking with DEP, and we're not necessarily getting exactly the same information other people are getting. And at the moment, we are not at all convinced that a variance for a pre-K 6 on Roselle, we're not discussing Howard when we're talking with the DEP folks right now, they're not able to tell us that that applies.
I'm just saying, when we were looking at Howard, you weren't aware that we had a variance? Because one of
For
the
the
reasons I
current,
think
for the current
that-
system, no. I wasn't, doesn't mean the rest of the team and the engineers
I'm
weren't.
just saying that, I thought we ruled it out because we thought it wouldn't work there. So I assumed that you would have done that work and knew that there was a variance, because that was one of the reasons we ruled that property out, right?
We knew just based on the increased volume, based on the increased population, that we would go from septic to wastewater. But we have room at Howard, we knew that right from the beginning. We have room at Howard to do a wastewater at the tune of an unreimbursed cost of about $6 million. We knew that.
But with the option of getting a variance, we might not have to do that. So
But-
the $6 million would be moot.
Right, but again, the variance is a big unknown at this point. It's debatable about whether or not it's for new construction. It's a school-only variance for new construction. So I don't know, I don't know how the variance was put into play for when that system was, and maybe Art can help with this, I don't know, in terms of...
you'd like.
Sorry?
If you'd like, I can, because
That would
was
be
involved.
helpful. Yeah, sure.
The reason we have a variance here and we have a variance at Roselle is because both of these systems had wastewater treatment plants. We had surface water discharge. One, we just talked about this, one went across 106 down to Town River. The other one goes out, if you're standing at the back of Roselle, it goes out to the right and it goes down into the river down there. DEP wanted us to get rid of those surface water discharge permits because the regulations were going to be changing. They recommended we go to a Title V system. As part of that, the consultants we were using went through each school, went through the DEP process, submitted the 3 years' worth of water use data times 200%, submitted to DEP. DEP came back and approved the flow variance for those schools. They did it first separately for this one and a separate one for the Roselle. So we have those variances to get us to the Title V system. If we do a new system, if we would tie in something additional to that and not be pushing ourselves over, we might be able to keep that. If we were going to come back now and say, well, we're going to do a whole new system with an upgraded population, we'd probably have to go through that process again. And now it's anew. Before, it was all existing. And we got kind of lucky we were able to carry it through when we built this school. I think just because it was the same middle, senior, high school grades that we had before.
So in other words, the variance that was endorsed for the middle senior high school was the old building.
Yes, and we got it. In fact, we had discussions with whoever the consultant was that designed this, that they needed to try to push that, because otherwise this building would have pushed us into a treatment plant to begin with.
But just to clarify, The old school had the old discharge. When you built this school, you secured a variance to go
No.
into... No?
This old school, everything that goes there now, all went in, across the river in the treatment plant. Before we built this school, we got that variance. So it was the old middle senior high school was on it.
And that was to go, because that was in '09, that's when he tied you
Yes.
to the new system.
That's when that got built. Then we kind of pushed the engineers to say, look, we need to keep that. We just got off this wastewater, the surface water discharge permit. We don't want to go back on it. And they actually did do some things with the variance and with the fixture counts and the flow, you know, the actual low flow fixtures and stuff to show that we'd still be underneath the 9,900. So they had to do some extra work so we could basically keep the variance on this school that allowed us to keep going. So it was all that stuff was basically an upgrade to what was existing, not something, there was nothing new being put on any of it at the time.
My concern was more so that we ruled out Howard, assuming that we needed a wastewater treatment plant and that it wouldn't work, but we didn't know that there would be a variance even available. It wasn't something that we even were aware was a possibility when we were voting Howard down.
Your assumption that we didn't talk about a variance is accurate, but we knew a wastewater treatment would fit, but we were concerned about the extra price tag, fully unreimbursed, having to engineer that for the entire municipal system, as well as, I mean, my recollection of that November 12th meeting was we spent probably more time talking about site issues unrelated to septic and wastewater. We talked about site issues relative to the building options and the effect on traffic and the effect on the other buildings on the property, more than we did about wastewater and septic. That's just my recollection.
I agree with that.
Could you go back to the map that's in option 19, please?
The map that said,
Yeah,
here.
that's right. So in full disclosure, I've been discussing with Gary behind the scenes because I felt it was unfair to the committee back in November. It didn't matter to me if we went Rosella Howard. At that time, I felt like the spirit of the vote was because we said, okay, we can't do pre-K to 6 at Howard. We'll do pre-K to 6 at Roselle, not a big deal. That's good. There was a lot of concern about the site issues. But then I worked with the GIS map and I was able to push that footprint north where it says current wastewater treatment on site. And our Board of Health spoke to DEP about the variance into the existing septic. It is true that there's no guarantee that's going to be approved, as Art said. This here, according to what the Board of Health was saying, because the person at DEP would say that there is a new construction variance for schools that is permitted because of the low flow. And in the meantime, we've taken all the volumes from the schools, and all the volumes, including Roselle, is well below 10,000 gallons per day. So the numbers work. Whether or not you can tie into it requires a variance. And so it is true that the variance may or may not be approved, and you would have to apply for it.
And so, David, I just want to, I think, correct you on one aspect of that. We do not have a determination from DEP that variance was crafted for new construction. Our understanding is that it generated for some changes in the regulations that were taking place relative to existing, and the variance language for schools only was put in to deal with schools that were existing schools that were upgrading their septics to be able to meet the intent of the new prescriptive requirement without going full throttle. So we're still, the individual that's responsible for drafting that language retired, and the current staff person is not making a commitment that it is applicable to new construction. They're going to consult with this person who retired and try to get input from that individual, but we don't know when that'll happen. But we're feeling at this point that we don't have a guarantee that it is applicable to new construction, And from my line of thinking, it's the same level of uncertainty we have, a different flavor, but same level of uncertainty we have about DEP and working with DEP, that we won't get clarification on this, and even if there is clarification about whether it's applicable, won't have an answer on the acceptance of the variance until well into permitting, which puts us way down the road in terms of a commitment financially as well to the town, and we may be at an impasse at that point. So it's a concern at this point.
So, I think the email referenced new construction, that's why I was referring to it, but again, I'm going by memory. In any event, I was the one that wanted the committee just to know all the information, because at the end of the day, if the committee decides to go to Roselle, so be it. But I didn't feel like all the information had been vetted at that point, because there was a lot of unknown answers. And since then, we've been able to get some new information. So that's why I asked the information to be brought up.
Is the information you just presented here from the engineers, or is that information that you had conversations with people about?
Our Board of Health had conversations with DEP, because they deal directly with DEP.
So I'll just add that we are having conversations with HMFH, their engineer, and the Board of Health too. So, and Sammy Otis, who's the civil engineer, has been talking to DEP, and we're trying to get to the bottom of the new construction and questions with the variance. And also on top of that, we haven't fully done the calculations yet for the flow to vet those out.
And I just want to add, everything we're doing is on the Roselle site, not on Howard.
Yeah.
So that would be my only concern, is that, you know, what we're saying for flows over here that you talked about with the Board of Health, how they jive with Sambiotis or whoever's doing the flows on there, and are they going to align?
No, the flows just come from the water department, so those are definitive.
Well, they're not, if I may, the Roselle flows are not definitive. That number is so low, we have a concern about the meter. We discussed that at the meeting last night, because it got brought up as to why how could it possibly be that low? And the problem is Roselle has a large meter, and we're worried it might be under-registered.
So at the end,
The Roselle is basically, I looked up the stuff from 2009, and when they did the application of the variance, we ended up with an 1,800 gallon a day design flow for that school. So if you add that into what we're running through now, which is still less than the amount that we're permitted for, we go over the 10,000 gallons. Now, I don't know if that number would hold today, if it'd be higher or lower, but that was when they did the actual analysis of the numbers back in '09, that's what they came up with.
So it's 6,200 gallons per day right now, not the accurate number?
No, the long-term average right now is running about 6,700. Since the kids have been back in school from COVID, it's closer to 7,200,
All right, so then you're close.
which is still under, well, you know, I think the estimated flow was 8,900, and we designed it for 99 to give us some flexibility back then. But no, in fact, I just looked up the numbers today with the kids being back in school, and the period I looked at was 2 summers, 1 full year in school, and then however far through the school year we are now.
And that's for the mounted system over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sarah?
Yeah, we don't have that kind, I don't have that kind of data for Roselle, because that
Right.
doesn't track the flows the way we do.
I think at the end of the day, for this purpose, right, we can't bank on a variance, right? So you presented, there might be one, but at the end of the day, if you're gonna go forward with Howard for MSBA, like the way they govern, we wouldn't be able to not carry, my understanding is we wouldn't be able to not carry that $6 million wastewater treatment plant. Like, we're not gonna get out of that price tag as we move forward in this process, is my understanding of how they work. Because we can't bank on something that somebody can't say to us, yes, you can have that.
Agreed, and I'll look to PMA, if you correct my statement here, I think there's a possibility that we may not get past the MSBA approval with a variance in play.
Correct.
Yeah, there's still some risk there about, once we get some more information from the DP on the variance, whether the MSBA will allow us to proceed with risk with having the variance. Same thing as if we are going to DEP for wastewater treatment plant approval, there's risk associated with that.
So
So-
it's feasible for a wastewater treatment plant, but I believe from back, I forget, November, October, it was the program that really impacted. There really wasn't a lot of space for parking. It really wasn't about the treatment plant or the septic. It was more
Whereas there's
about,
more open space and less wetlands.
yeah, it was more about like the program and scale, in my opinion, for me.
Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? Let me just put wastewater and septic aside for a second at Howard. Does anyone have anything else they would like to discuss, revisit as it relates to the Howard site in terms of any of the building options, layouts?
I just have one question.
Sure.
Because we've scaled down the building from whatever, 200,000 to 165, does that help with some of the stuff that Sarah was saying about the parking and the road layout and stuff like that?
You feel done with them?
You can see in comparison back to the plans we were showing earlier of the yellow and the orange boxes, right? Like this footprint now admittedly looks smaller than it was because before we were having much more
So
big
it
boxes.
can help with the
So
parking
this
area.
is, it can help get you a few parking spaces.
Sure.
It doesn't change, the length of queuing that you can get on the site that you might have at Roselle, where you can do the nice,
And
move
Okay, now
around the
my question.
building.
Was there a study on this one about like the program, the program matrix you guys do? Like, was there a loss in program and services based on this condensed one?
This footprint is still the same, so this is still, so the diagrams, thinking of it as a diagram, this is the same pre-K-6 footprint that you've been seeing at
Gotcha.
Roselle. So it's the
Okay.
exact same, just turned around to make it fit.
All right.
Then the other thing, anything on Howard pushes our construction schedule back too, because we can't do anything until the whole town, other than that school, is on the new treatment plant, or if we had to upgrade. But whatever we have to do, all has to be done and in place. So that pushes,
Build the septic first, then we build.
Well, it'd have to be like a phase one, right? You'd have to get the.
Yeah.
before you, so we're not demolishing anything, we're not building anything new. And then once we build it new, so it's probably gonna put the kids out another year, depending on when they get into the building.
We might be able to stagger like the phase one and the new building construction, so I wouldn't, we would have to look at it more to say definitely that it would push it out further.
Sarah?
Can you just go back to that plan real quick?
It went afterwards.
There we go.
Oh, okay, so we wouldn't have to do pods or renting classrooms, okay.
Yeah, I can see the footprint of Howard is there.
Anything else anybody wants to bring up about the Howard site? Can I just go, Mitch, can you go back to your impact slide? And
Yeah.
Again, I would just want to emphasize the line that says design cost impact. So that's 300 to 350,000 that would have to be part of feasibility. But we know we'd have to resubmit, well, we haven't submitted PSR yet. We know we'd have to redo PSR completely over based on the draft that they're working on right now. There's a chance we'd have to go back to PDP. And while our design team was asked and bid on the fact that they had 3 sites to do preliminary evaluations on, it was never the intent for HMFH or any other design team that was bidding on this project to put together 2 PSR plans with multiple options for 2 sites. So for us to go back to Howard at this stage of the game would require them to do that. And that's where that 300 to 350,000 is coming from, which we've spent already within the the Roselle auction. So we would have to go back to town meeting and get another 300 to 350,000 before we could complete this.
And that's not really the only number, because we would also have to get somebody to start looking at, well, Marcy, if people want to talk about all the numbers.
I'm not talking
So we would also have to do another project for the wastewater treatment. When would that come into play? Like the cost for that design?
That would be wrapped into this.
into the project.
We'd have
I
a
would- yeah,
feasibility
that would be
study
separate.
number to carry forward into schematic design, and then get another number during schematic design.
Is that included in the 3 to 350?
As a guess, yeah.
And this is getting the wetland scientists back out to walk the Howard side. So all these incremental steps that we did to learn more about Roselle, those are now incremental steps that would have to be repeated and have happen at the Howard site.
Good. I just want to make sure that was all encompassed
Yep.
there, or if there was a separate project.
Anything else on Howard? All right, hearing none, we'll move on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, just because we're not going to really just call this a school project, we're going to call this a wastewater treatment project. We want to circle back to Roselle, okay? And we have done enough work and legwork to know that there's a 50-50 shot of ever getting approved by DEP for a wastewater treatment plant at Roselle, which is why we are saying we cannot do a 50-50 is not good odds under any circumstances. You're never going to grow to 100%, starting with such a low shot at it working. And there are no one's come forward and provided a site to us. There's no other site for a wastewater treatment plant to serve the Roselle property. That being said, based on information brought forward regarding a DEP variance, okay, we have, as Mitch said, we have already reached out to DEP. We've already, first of all, talked with your Board of Health agent to hear what he's been hearing. We've spoken to the DEP individual, same individual that the Board of Health agent in town has spoken with. And in that conversation, he was not willing to say, well, of course it's applicable that you can get a variance for this. He went, I'll have to get back to you. As Gary alluded to, there's another individual who was there for a very, very, very long time in that role, Brett Rowe, and he's going to reach out to that person, because that person was the one who was actually instrumental in writing these regulations around the variance, and find out whether or not this is remotely applicable. I think it's a little bit of the new English language. When it says new, it actually probably means a new septic system. It may not necessarily mean a new building entirely. It means you have an existing situation. That's where we've all been understanding of it. We're open to hearing what they have to say, and if, in fact, there's anything applicable about our condition, which is taking 3 separate school buildings and bringing them all to a site for one brand-new building, and the calculation, really roughly, because this is all the paperwork you have in DEP, it doesn't actually tell you exactly how to calculate it. Basically, it would be, as Art was alluding to, our best approach put forward to try to get a variance. It starts with understanding what the existing water usage is. We have a few hiccups along that way. Roselle's numbers are a little funky. There's a few things we would have to do. We would also have to increase it by a population of, 150%, because our enrollment is going up. Then we have to 200% it and still be under 10,000 gallons per day. So all of that is all very high-level math that would need to be done. We would, as we just discussed, be open to not getting the variance accepted, and the question mark of how MSBA feels about having a pending variance in the system and the timing for that. All of this is questions we've got out there. We don't have the answers to the first one, so it's hard to have answers to the next lines at this moment. Again, we're doing our due diligence as best we can with the people we are talking with. Hopefully, we can get some answers from them. This is only really relevant with putting a pre-K-6 at Roselle. So we know we can do a pre-K-4. And you're also going to see, and you've already looked, we're going to put forward a K-6. And we'll talk more about that momentarily. Any question? I feel like we had the conversation, we're having it again, but this is where it was in the plug, which is specific to Roselle. Any other questions that we can try? Yes.
Has anyone talked to the town conservation agent?
They've been on site, walked the site as far as the wetlands, that conversation? Yeah?
Well, and he was part of the first meeting that the design team had with the Board of Health agent.
Yeah.
He was part of that meeting as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim?
You also haven't addressed parking at all. you're gonna have a problem with stormwater management, depending on the size of material you're gonna be putting down. So that could add, more to the fact that you're gonna have more water going into the system.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you done anything with that?
Again, you're not talking my expertise, but we're talking the stormwater system versus the septic system are two separate animals. They're both concerns, because you've got a website overall, so water table level, exactly. So they're two different buckets of effort that need to be done. You're absolutely right, and I wish my
Which you
civil
all done
engineer.
at the same time.
No, but I'm just saying in terms of, they need to be, they're solved separately, but in the design phases, absolutely.
And the
Absolutely.
stormwater and the stormwater's retention on site is something we as the design team can at least make a solution for and not
We don't
be
need to
seeking
go-
a variance or a state approval for. We can,
Good point.
I'll put my faith in Samiotis that they will be able to design us a system that will appropriately
Yeah.
capture the rainwater on site, hold it, and let it dissipate at the
There's,
time.
there's methodologies, there's detention and retention, there's surface, there's underground, so all of those components probably would need to happen anywhere in this town, but definitely would happen at the Roselle site, so, good point. Yeah. Okay. So, the next topic is a little bit different. So the last time we met, yes, the last time we met, we did the box, the straw poll. And in that, there wasn't a single vote for addition renovation. So we're just wondering, to sort of help us all move forward and feel like we've accomplished something, could we possibly consider eliminating ad reno for a pre-K4 or ad reno for a pre-K6 on Roselle? Can we consider that as a
And so just
potential?
just to those of you who are, myself, left over from the school building committee for this building, this is not unlike what we did at this similar meeting for this project. We started out by, we had 3 ad reno options, 2 new construction options, and we, right off the top, basically at this phase of the meeting, to focus on the new construction, we took the ad reno, took a vote to take those off the table. So that's basically where we are in this agenda. So, like Lori, I guess I'm making an assumption that we haven't heard a lot of support vocalized for either of these 2 ad reno options, pre-K to 4, pre-K to 6. So, if you're so inclined to do that, someone, and I'd like to do them separately, because we still have to present these options to MSBA in the report, the submittal, but we should do them separately.
Or are we eliminating ad reno options from both sites?
We only have one
Let's talk
site,
Roselle right now.
Roselle.
We're only talking Roselle at this point. So if you're so inclined, I would entertain a motion to eliminate option 5, pre-K4, addition renovation from our consideration.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion, questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Unanimous vote, thank you. I'll therefore entertain an option to eliminate option 14, pre-K to 6, addition renovation from our scope.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion, concerns, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just ask
Scott?
a dumb question about, I know we're talking about Roselle and stuff like that, but does doing an ad reno at Howard skirt any of the new construction septic
No, because...
stuff? You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I'm gonna, again, I'll answer. No, because even though it's an addition and renovation,
It's an increase in flow.
you have to build it to the new code,
Right, but
everything.
I know we're talking that you might go get a variance if
So,
it's a new construction project.
But if
The ad reno, you know what I mean?
the code in general, all the state codes will deal with it as a new building.
even if it's an ad run? Okay.
Correct, because of the volume of the
Okay.
renovation and
That's what- yeah,
addition that
okay,
we're
that's what I
doing.
was looking for.
And so therefore, again, we don't know the question about whether or
Yeah.
not the variance DEP is applicable for new construction, so we don't know the answer to that
Yeah.
question, but it would be treated, my assumption would also be treated as a new building in the DEP.
But my understanding is you already are using 6,200 gallons with all the buildings that are on the town septic now. Right, something 7,200. 7,200 times 2 is over 10,000.
Yeah, I was asking.
So it's kind of,
Well,
even
yeah,
with a
it's fine. I know they're gonna let
variance,
us
it's
add
still a
on, yeah.
wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I was trying to skirt the rules, that's all.
We're ready.
Yeah, I know, that's what.
If there was a way in which,
Yeah, I know.
If we're doing a variance, you can be in the room to help, strategize. We're good.
All right?
Okay. So now we're gonna move on to looking, so option 7, which is our pre-K to 4, we've done the same A, B, C breakdown we did to option 17. I'll click through the plans here. So this was the original option 7, and so you might look at these and go, these look exactly the same as 17, A, B, and C. Because they are, because since you're just eliminating 5th and 6th grade who was up on that 3rd floor, so it's the 3rd floor that's gotten wiped off of what was option 17, A, B, and C. So the footprint of all of these stays the same. It's the same idea, sorry, I'll click back. In A, you're doing a 1-phase construction where you've taken out the gym and the 2 classrooms at Rose L, build the whole new school, and everybody moves in. 7B is you've moved everyone off into modulars, demolish Roselle, build it all in 1 phase. Or 7C, now where we flip-flopped and we're building that phase 1 as what's outlined in blue as the bottom wing. Then everyone from Roselle moves in, and then you build phase 2, which would be the older kids that are coming from Howard, yeah. So now the new piece that you haven't seen before is we've added some costs and a bit of a timeline to these. And so the one thing we wanted to highlight for you is just, we're seeing the difference as you have a bit of a different, building completion dates for these. So 7C is getting you into the building, out of Roselle, the students out of Roselle into the building the quickest. The entire project not being completed until September 29. And then 7A and then incrementally 7B being a bit longer duration.
So the big difference in this is whether or not, so 7B is an unoccupied site, single-phase construction, but you're paying money for modulars, okay? And so, not a lot of people love paying money for modulars because it kind of goes out the window, you don't have any brick and mortars left behind, but if having an empty site for the contractor with no little ones on the site is of appeal, then that's why you choose to pay the money and house them somewhere else so you can have a single-phase construction and they go out. So the lines you're seeing, the cost temp facility line, here and here, is that added cost. Again, you all asked us to try to calculate this. These are all still feasibility study, conceptual cost numbers, but we're doing our best just so you can have that apples to apples comparison. And so to move all of, Roselle 1 through 3 somewhere, I don't know, on the field at Howard temporarily with a pumped out system for toilets because we can't impact your system. It's not an easy solution, but that's the one we came up with as a quick high level number. Would be an add of $9 million. And then in the other sort of approach where the Roselle stays on site, but we take over the gymnasium portion so that we can build the whole building at once, that's an add because we would want to have some modulars also on site. They wouldn't go someplace else. They would be on site for the couple of classrooms that are also in that portion of West L. So again, these are just different approaches to achieve what we're looking for and want your feedback. I don't know which hand went up first, so.
I've been talking already.
In the 7A option, there would be no gym. that's eliminated for the time of the construction.
It is. The temp facilities is just the classroom spaces. There's
Yeah.
not a temporary gymnasium space in that number.
So running around in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Keep that
And
close
so
to the-
the cost to West Bridgewater and the total project cost are including those temporary facility
Yes.
costs? Okay. It's not an addition to
Yep,
the total.
yep.
But that's no gym and temporary.
It would be, the two classrooms would be located on site, yep.
All right.
No, that was my question. That 9 million is in the 97.7.
Yes, it's in the top three numbers, it's already, yeah, so the 157 includes the 9 million.
Yeah, it's broken out just so you
The
can...
154 includes the 1 million.
So you can see what that number is.
Yeah. I just wanted to share with you guys.
Just for comparison purposes, all those carry CM at risk,
Right now, yeah.
which is high.
Yep.
Yep, yeah, right now.
I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't hear your question. What was it?
All those bottom line numbers for cost to West Bridgewater carry CM at risk, which is more expensive than GC.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, this side of the table is pretty comfortable if it was an empty site to BGC. So there is some savings there, but we're just not, calculating that number of what might come off item 7B at the moment, but.
Yeah, it's better to carry that in there at this stage of the game if we're not sure which option we're going to go with, and we're not at the point to make that decision yet. All right, any other questions on this, David?
Can we just look back at what option 7 was?
Sorry.
Oh, 7 is going back to went to the cost estimator a month ago scenario that we don't like the orientation of as much.
It's not as, yeah. Yeah,
What's the construction duration?
Where are we starting construction dates? Who's got the months? These are completion dates,
Which
so.
it is, but you want to know just the duration.
How many, is it like 2 school years?
2 school years
2
is
years,
what
yes.
we're ballparking, yeah.
It's usually about 18 months, but we're going to look at doing certain pieces earlier. We're going to look at all sorts of different options to accelerate schedule, building septic before the building. If the septic system, putting that in place before we break ground on the building so it's ready to go. So there's strategies that we would use to improve it, but I'd say 18 months, about 2 school years is about what you should be thinking.
This one, just a comparison, this one, we broke ground in October, we were done in July, right, June or July, and so the summer was moving, so,
Sometimes it also depends when you break ground. If you try to break ground in the middle of January, it usually doesn't work so well, so that might push you into March, so if you're only building for 18 months, it still might be a 20-month construction schedule, just because you're not able to get out of the ground as fast as you would like to.
sure.
I grew up in Weymouth schools at a time when they had to put modular classrooms in middle school. 7 to 9. Education did not happen in those modulars. I remember we were able to just sit and pound our feet on the floor and try to make the building shape. Kids at that age were building. And we were segregated and isolated from everybody else. And it was not a good educational thing. So, I think educationally, I'm not an educator. I went to school to be a music educator. But I feel that putting kids in modular classrooms is detrimental to their health going forward, educational. And that's all I have to say.
I would agree with Cheryl, just thinking that 2 years of students in classrooms is an extremely long time, especially at this age.
Could you just repeat with the A, B, and C, what the modular options would be?
Sure, yeah. So for 7A, and this would, for future thinking, this applies to the 17 A's and B's as well. A, you've lost the gymnasium wing that has 2 classrooms in it. So you'll have 2 classrooms that would be happening within, on-site that are happening in a modular. 7B is the scenario where everyone in Roselle has moved out and is now in modulars. Admittedly, they're all on the same pool, so to speak, but everybody's in a modular. And then 7C, it's phased in a way that's not requiring any modulars or temporaries. So phase 1 is being built, everyone is still in Roselle, they have all the spaces that are currently available to them in Roselle. Once phase 1 is complete, they all move from Roselle into phase 1, Roselle's demolished, and then phase 2 is then constructed to give the additional capacity needed to bring in students from the other schools.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I will comment, a lot of times when modulars are put on schools, the teachers love them because they get AC. It's a brief window that they get AC when nobody else has it, but I'm not a proponent necessarily for modulars.
No, it's good, just to say, educationally, I think it's a big concern to put 300-plus kids and staff on a site presumably at Howard, where you still have one gym, one cafeteria, one kitchen. So there's a lot of educational concerns to go on.
Just
David.
on 7C, obviously the building is still being in use, so the parking lot is being used. During construction, there's enough space there for construction, heavy equipment to be in while school is in session?
Yeah, I mean, we've all done type projects. I've literally done a brand-new school in 2 phases on 2 acres. So contractors need to know where they can be, where they can't be. They will have to adjust when they're arriving and leaving, separate from the schools. So, because again, you do have that one entrance place. All of those things would all need to be worked out and acceptable to the school. School's doing testing days, they're quiet, they're not doing loud noises. All of those things get vetted out in a schedule that the contractor works on. So I think, we sort of saw this and we started brainstorming because we can't help ourselves, that again, schedule permitting, that we would maybe have a straightened out road, which is sort of what we're aiming for, and that's built early. So the contractor's using that and the school is still using their regular entry point. Keeping that separation is going to be super important. Yeah.
Parking is usually the bigger concern, and we'd have to figure out where you put the contractors, because you need to allot for that. You can't just say, well, they'll figure it out. They won't.
Yeah.
And making sure we keep the teacher lot separate, so only teachers are allowed, hang tags, things like that, to ensure that the teachers get priority over the parking, and only they can park in the lots designated for them.
Okay. Any other questions on pre-K to 4?
Okay, 6.
All right, on K to 6, so again, I just feel a little bit of an explanation because you first heard about this in the email. Obviously, it came up at the meeting last week with the public forum. But again, this was an option that was in our original menu with MSBA. And so we felt pretty comfortable. I mean, it came about as a lot of caucusing that occurred after our straw vote and how close those results were. And, sort of, is there anything else we could look at? And yeah, we got the K through 6 that we never touched, but it was there. Sean made a call to MSBA just to confirm that we, at this stage of the game, we could make this change in time for the submittal due on May 1st, and was told yes. In fact, they were happy to get that call as compared to the enrollment call we made a few weeks earlier. So that's what started that, as a potential for getting us, just by removing the pre-K students population and the staff. We're only close on septic and wastewater by that small amount. It gets us below that threshold, and we could just deal with the septic issue through the Board of Health by looking at this option.
So we're as sure of this 9,808 gallons number as we are any of the other calculations that we have, right?
Yeah, this one's a straight time, the population times 8. This one's, there's no other numbers involved. Yeah.
There's no additional risk here compared to the calculation. that
In the
we
code, it
provided.
tells you for an elementary school, this is the number you use. If you're over the 10,000, then that's when you get into the variance, so this keeps us under that number.
And this will definitely fit at the Roselle site.
Yeah, we'll go over the plans with you.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So I think that covers kind of our bullet points here of, these are where the calculations are going, and gave us some good news that it complies. It is assuming that the pre-K and/or district offices can stay at Spring Street. And so in terms of cost, right now, the cost that you'll see, pre-K and district offices were all below the line of that MSBA spreadsheet, so that was costs that were on the town. So at the moment, that square footage is now out of the numbers for the K to 6 option.
We weren't sure about pre-K. Pre-K was still, MSBA was going to tell us one way or another, but we did know that district offices were not going to be covered.
And I'll go through, so again, the A, B, and C applies to this option as well.
Can I just, see if,
Yep.
Mark, could you just speak to the issue of pre-K staying and the pre-K and district office issues?
So when we discussed this, we looked at pre-K, could assume the kindergarten classrooms, we're planning for 5, and we have 5 down there right now, which would free up the right side of the building where some of the central office is also, that's where the 3 preschool classrooms are. It would free up that space for more related services when they're there. They would fit there. We would still maintain a main office for preschool. Preschool is different. They have half-day, they have full-day programs, they have the cafeteria there. It's a viable fit for them. Having the 1 grade, I wouldn't recommend having a 6th grade all by themselves, but preschool, so your pre-K program does work there. I think there is some options down the road too, if you could look at, because that would vacate both the Spring Street, potentially, and Howard, so Howard could also be looked at as a pre-K and central office down the road, or at least Howard School open for renting, leasing, some other use. But I think it's a viable option. I think it works. I do know our families like the early childhood feel of the Spring Street, but then you're balancing that with potential uses for that space. So that's why I say, again, it's outside the scope of, I think, this school building committee, but it's later discussion to move over to Howard and then utilize that space for fields, parking, and so forth.
And I think too, just to add to that, when we first talked about the option of preschool staying there, moving down to the kindergarten wing, it's more conducive for preschool, because preschool right now, they have to come out of the classroom, walk around the corner to use the bathroom, and they need staff with them. The kindergarten wing automatically has bathrooms in between, so that will take that component out of it. They're right size for little ones. The playground's already fenced in, it's got the equipment that's already there, and it's almost like if you use the Spring Street entrance, that whole side of the building could be just preschool. So I think it might be a reasonable option.
We have some issues right now with the facilities at Spring Street. So heat wasn't always working in the cafeteria. Do you feel that we'll be able to manage those problems moving forward and keeping Spring Street functional, and that we're not going to be running into big issues, and we're going to need to do some capital investment to try and make Spring Street not have that problem in the future?
I believe the roof was done minus some
Yeah,
sky.
the roof is, it's a newer roof, the building's in good shape. We do have problems with kitchen heat, but that would have to be resolved. But the air handlers and the rest of the wings are in good shape, plumbing's in good shape, and the roof is fairly new.
And then we're going to do it.
And it's a brick building, so it's got good bones.
It's an old building.
So we feel pretty confident that it wouldn't be a mistake leaving the administration and pre-K, that we can make good use of it.
I would say short-term concerns, I think down the road, sure, it's an old building, but I think it's viable for a number of years, but it will need some attention down the road.
Right, thank you.
So the footprint admittedly looks very similar to what you've been looking at, but previously, this has been early childhood up here when we were in a pre-K to 6 model. So now because we've needed the larger leg to fit K, 1, 2, 3, so that your Roselle population could move in easily, that's become the longer wing, and then 4, 5, and 6 is how they're up here. I clicked along. So First grade and kindergarten are on the ground floor of this wing. Again, there's still that potential for kindergarten wanting a separate entrance, that could happen. Second and third floor are on the second floor here. So that's still kind of going back to original conversations about having a lower school and an upper school. You're easily splitting the wings where this is the lower school to the south, and then the upper school of 4th, 5th, and 6th grade is happening on that northern wing. The A, B, and C subplots still apply to all of this, where A, again, loss of the gymnasium in one classroom, to build it all as one phase, empty everybody out into modulars as the B option, build it in one phase, or again, 17C would be you're building phase 1, which is capturing, already your first, second, and third population of Roselle. Those kindergarten spaces might stay empty until the whole project is done, so you're not moving the extra littles on site while phase 2 is being constructed. Knock down Roselle, build phase 2, now 4, 5, 6, and kindergarten all move in. So let's stop there. Any questions so far on just scenario of it? So this is, again, similar kind of layers of cost rolled onto there. The temporary facilities cost is still the same for A and B. Completion dates for those.
Yeah, on the slide, it says building within, for the K to 6 option, 100 feet wetland buffer required as MLI filing conservation committee. Is that a risk, or?
No, and that's kind of a bullet point we've had on all, that applies to all of them, so if I click to the site plan, this lighter blue line is that 100-foot line, so we can, a building happening between the 150, that's fine, and then a roadway happening between the 50 and 100. 50 and 100 is okay. So there's kind of different levels. So as long as my building is staying out of that 50 line, we're okay. So sorry, that's what that's saying. So road within the 50 wetland buffer, that's okay. We can get applications to have that passed. And the building within the 100-foot, also okay. It's just added layers of paperwork that we need to file for.
Okay, so we were asked, and so we put in some numbers just for understanding, for again, as everyone says, it's not this committee's decision of what happens, but was asked what would it cost to demolish Spring Street and/or Howard, which would both require abatement, so these are approximate $1.125 million for each to be abated and demolished. That doesn't mean site development after, you're not getting sports field, I mean, it's not like the next step of what you would do with it, but again, it was asked. And then it was also asked, what if the district offices, what if that amount of square footage was not part of the project, and we estimated it's about a $2.5 million savings to any of the numbers you've been seeing on the charts. So again, we're just trying to respond to those.
So the 2.5 savings is reflected in the total project cost that you're seeing on this side.
The 2.5, if you go back to that one
Yep.
real quick. So the 2.5 include that we're not demoing the Spring Street School, or is that, if district officers stay at the Spring Street School, you're saying we're saving 2.5? That's, but then we wouldn't be demoing Spring Street right now, so that'd take 3.6 off?
These are just three different costs.
These are just three different separate numbers, just for your own reference, for future efforts, right? So, again, just responding to the question of, well, if we empty out these two school buildings, what are we going to do with them? What if we want to demolish them? And that's a number we can easily get you, you
That
know.
can't be rolled into this project at all, right?
As far as we know, no. We can't,
Funding.
No, the demo.
Demo
If you
Yes, right.
vacate a building, MSBA will, oftentimes, we've done it before, where they've allowed you to demo the building, but they will not pay for it. And they won't let you really do any improvements other than take the building out and level the site. You can't, they usually don't let you put a sports field or anything like that as part of the project, but we've been to 2 projects recently where they've allowed us, if a school gets vacated off-site, to demolish that building you can include it in the project, but it's 100% cost of it.
So you could take advantage of scale with a demolition contract and do both buildings.
But with it being offsite, with a caveat, it's probably a case-by-case basis. We would certainly make that case to the MSBA on the town's behalf, but, you never know. It's just, we've had experience where it's worked out for us recently, so we would assume that it would work out here.
Yeah, if it's a palatable thing, and that's what this committee would like us to do, then we'll try to include it.
Gary, just a quick
Yeah.
question. So the original statement of interest that was submitted would have discussed the existing facilities, because it has to, in order to be able to justify what we're looking to do. So, did this original statement of interest say that minus the HVAC system and overcrowding, that Spring Street still is, like, it doesn't reference any other potential issues or existing issues with that building?
We definitely referenced, issues in the future. I think the overcrowding was the main issue.
But I'm saying the structure of the building.
Structure of the building, it was definitely all referenced within the statement of interest.
I know. My question is, since we're considering leaving it for pre-K, did the original statement of interest refer to any structural deficiencies with Spring Street exclusive of the HVAC system?
Nothing major in structure.
And again, from an
Except being, late 1950s building.
And from an MSBA standpoint, they're not really considering pre-K. I mean, they allow us to use space, but it's not within the enrollment, and so from their standpoint, we are accomplishing the statement of interest goal by getting kindergarten out of Spring Street with both these options.
Yes. The reason I'm asking the question is because eventually this committee is going to be asked whether we do pre-K through 4 or K through 6.
Yeah,
So if we do
20 minutes.
Okay. So if we do pre-K through 4, Spring Street School in essence comes offline.
Yes.
If we do K through 6, Spring Street stays online.
Correct.
So we're going to be making a decision.
Well, maybe. I mean, that was one of the things we talked about, because Mark mentioned, one option is you move the central office, the district office, and pre-K into Howard, because Howard becomes empty. So, I mean, there's different options there that are outside the purview of the school building committee, but it isn't necessarily that pre-K has to stay at Spring Street. There are some advantages that I'm talking about perhaps, but it isn't necessarily the only solution.
So we'll be taking a vote, and we're not sure exactly where pre-K may end up.
And I would say that I think Howard School does have a lot of value still, in terms of potential rental or lease with collaboratives, potential use of other things within the town, potential use of this building, which is at design enrollment right now, ever were to get overcrowded, we would need more space. And again, that's a decision not by this committee, but looking at other options for what to do with that.
Had a question, and I know it's out of our scope, but to have preschool at Howard would require extensive renovations for the bathrooms in each classroom and all that, correct?
I would think so, yes.
We've talked about that, we haven't thrown any numbers at it, but we've talked about what that would cost, and what would that trigger? What would those renovations trigger in terms of a complete redo?
Other questions before we call for a recess?
He's already on recess, I think.
All right, it's almost 6:40. I'll propose 15 minutes to 6:55. And when we come back, I mean, if you're all back earlier, we can start up. When we come back, we'll open it up for other questions that you may have thought of during the recess, or other conversations you may have had with fellow committee members during that time. We'll try to address those. before we look at whether or not we're ready to do any final voting. All right, so back at 6:55 PM, if you're not back soon. School building committee that we've had recessed. Our elementary project, so. Are there any questions or issues or concerns that people would like to talk about before we move forward? Just in general. Obviously, if there's a motion made, you can speak to that as part of the motion before we take a vote. Chris?
I was just wondering, how, for the base option for 17, are you able to do it in one phase without moving into what's going on?
The one phase,
So for this, for the base, what this would be. So you would have to rotate this guy back to where that L configuration was before.
Oh, that's different.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like the,
So, yeah,
just like the pre-K through 4 option, it would look like that.
yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, a little confused, a lot of options.
Not after today.
Okay, so how I'd like to proceed, if you're so inclined, is we would entertain a motion for one of the other options. If that option passes, there's no need to consider the one that's remaining. So this isn't a case of having to do elimination like we did with the ad rent. If the option fails, there's an opportunity then to make a motion for the second option, and if that option passes, we move forward. If one passes, we would then move on to separately consider the site and phasing configuration as they've been presented. So we want to deal with option 7, pre-K to 4 new construction, option 17 prime, K to 6 new construction. So
Barry, I'll make a motion, we proceed with option 17, K through 6, new construction.
Second.
So the option's been made for K through 6 new construction. Is there questions, discussions?
I think that the K to 6 configuration really gives us the best opportunity to help the most of our students. I think that's definitely going to be the most good for the town.
But then also leaves the oldest building.
Which Mark has said it's in good shape,
Oh,
and it'll be used less because there'll be less kids. You get the kindergartners out, you fix the AC in the one wing of it, and then you're okay.
Forms, we've always said that building is the oldest, it's in good shape, it's.
But again, as I said before the break, it's not within our purview to decide what happens there, but it should not be considered a foregone conclusion that that's where it's going to stay either. So there are at least the option of looking at another space for that within Howard.
And again, I will say it is, I think it's the oldest of the buildings that we have, but it's had the renovations. It is old, and the overcrowding was probably the bigger issue. I think with all the 3 elementary schools, the overcrowding was the primary issue. The age of the buildings and the inability to provide a, 20th century learning environment was another concern, but we've addressed some of those things through technology, and we've continued to work to make that better. It's definitely an old building, but it's also a renovation.
I mean, you certainly wouldn't want to keep it for any other grade, but pre-K.
You're referring to spring.
Correct.
Jim Henderson had to leave, but my understanding was he was going to leave the comments if a particular motion was made. Does anybody have Jim's comment?
I do.
Marcy?
Yeah, well, I know what his vote would be. There's no comment, but I know what his vote is.
Well, we're not able to take his vote. but-
No, I know.
So therefore, he wanted his opinion expressed if this particular motion was made.
That he was in favor of K through 6.
Thank you. Just for the record, so. He does not get a proxy vote, but he wanted his opinion expressed if that particular motion was made. So thank you for doing that. Other comments? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain the motion. All in favor of K through 6 option at the Roselle McDonald School site, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
No.
All right, I'm going to ask for a show of hands, please. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Can I have somebody count with K to 6?
Yes.
What do you have?
12, 13,
The chair is going to vote on this.
14, 15. I have 16 with,
16.
I have 16 with you.
And opposed, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6. Motion passes by majority vote. All right, with that vote established, we can move on to the site and phasing configuration. You want to put that, I think it'd be helpful to go over that one more time
Sure.
before we, making sure we're clear on what we're really asking for here.
Yep. So I believe for our vote, we're just deciding between, well, prime A, B, and C?
Yes.
Okay, so, I'll get up to Jen here again. So, the prime, not an A, B, and C, would be citing this building back into the original location we had been showing our options, that's having a northern-facing entry. It would all be constructed in a phase not touching the existing building. For A, you're doing a one-phase building construction where you've lost the gymnasium space and 2 classrooms for about 2 school years. And those 2 classroom spaces are happening in modulars on site, and gym is happening in the cafeteria quarters. 17B means everyone on the building has moved off-site into modulars. The whole building can be demolished at once. Construction's happening on a site that does not have students on it, so that's the pro for that on there. But everyone is off-site in modulars. On C, you're doing a 2-phase building construction, where the first thing that happens is you're building what's outlined in blue as a phase 1 construction. All of the students are still in the existing Roselle school building while phase 1's being built. Once phase 1 is finished construction, the students and staff are moving from Roselle, and they'll occupy phase 1. Then you can demolish the Roselle building and build phase 2, and then the students from Howard would be able to come over.
So no modular in this one, right?
No modular in this. No modular in this, no loss of gymnasium or any other spaces, because you still have full occupancy of the existing Roselle building while phase 1 is being constructed. There's definitely the dance you've got to do with the contractor while you're on site, and you'll have, be in close quarters, but that'll be kind of through good discussions with your contractor, say, okay, this is your dance space, this is my dance space, and work together on that.
Kathy, can you show the timelines again?
Yes, where were those back to?
You want the,
Click, yeah. It's not that one,
which timeline?
but just this.
Yeah.
Completion, it's,
And Don?
The district offices are included in that price?
yes,
Okay.
yes, I was incorrect on that before. So the district offices are included in these prices.
So it would be potentially $2.5 million less.
Correct.
Again, that's not a decision we need to make now.
No, I was just
Right,
wondering.
yeah, but just, we can deal with that during schematic design in terms of how we deal with that space.
And I'm sorry, can you show 17 one more time?
I think you should go to pre-K through 4, just
Yeah.
for a visual.
I got it.
17 by itself?
So
There
it
we
should-
go.
It should be, it will look like this.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
But that extra for the other, gotcha.
Is everybody clear on the options, citing phasing options?
Go back to the cost, please.
Go back to the cost.
So the base one's cheapest, then it gets them in the building fastest. Am I reading that right?
Let's see. See, you get to this, December 28th.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And December 29th.
That would be,
First part.
first phase would be, see,
First, second,
December
third.
28.
But the second one doesn't get into 29.
So for clarity, December 28 would be K to 3.
Yes,
With no modulars.
no modulars.
And do we have to narrow it down to one?
Sorry?
Is the goal to narrow it down to one?
That would be the ideal plan, yes.
Can still happen, it's not design between these right now.
Maureen,
Like of
what will we share with them?
one,
So can
So the answer to that question, let me just confirm, see if Sarah's thinking that the report due to MSBA May 1st cannot be simply, we're moving ahead with K through 6 as the preferred option. It has to be this level of definition, or this can be refined further
in schematic.
in the next phase.
Yeah, so basically, like, could we still explore, potentially take off the table the two with the modulars, but kind of still explore the option of 17 and C?
It's harder, different footprints on the site.
Yeah, we're gonna wanna know.
That's harder.
Because what,
That's harder to do.
it is harder to do, because when we go
Citing.
into schematic design, we're gonna wanna have the building orientation and layout, especially when we go to facilities assessment subcommittee with the MSBA at the PSR submittal.
So therefore, the answer is we have to.
Particularly if you're going to take a piece of the building off, they're going to want to know that so they can assess that that plan makes sense. So with any of these, they're going to know what your plan is, they're going to assess your plan and make sure they agree with that's the best path forward or it's a valid path forward. So they're going to want to know where your building is and what you're taking, what you're not taking, and how the project's being phased.
How long would you go to facilities after the PSR
It's about,
is submitted?
it's about a month and a half, I
So
think.
we'd have a chance to, so say we said tonight, yeah, 17 or 17C.
Because they get the package on, when we submit it on May 1st.
When we submit the
we can't-
PSR,
we
we
couldn't
actually
vote.
submit the presentation for the facilities subcommittee. Like, they get that all at the same time. So, so if we're honing in on not wanting modulars, which I'm not too far off with that vibe,
If you want to formalize that, I have no problem with entertaining a motion to eliminate both options that include modular.
Do you have to put in that, like, it would definitely be a modular? Because we were having a conversation over here about other possibilities for 17A of not needing a modular, of
Okay.
making a
Yeah.
couple classes bigger and having like a teacher
Yeah,
push into
what
those
was
rooms.
thinking?
So there'd be 2 adults for 30 kids.
What do you say, Mr. Super?
It depends on enrollment, though, we're talking,
So
you
it's
know,
our
a couple
current-
years down the road possibly, and we
We
don't
think
know
it's
if
our
that
current
could.
first graders.
It's
So we'd be-
a
right?
possibility, but I think we would have to leave open the option of having to need modulars, just due to the amount of students. Because now, again, we're
But I didn't
talking,
know if that had
those,
to-
that current first grade will be maybe almost in 4th grade by the time we start
No, it'll
construction.
be- Or it would be the current kindergarten, either kindergarten or first would be 3rd graders at that time.
Well, I mean, I think that the difference between that and the first suggestion is that the building footprint and orientation has been decided on, and we're not just like, all of a sudden, a month into schematic design, changing everything, because they will not be happy with us. But the idea that it's the same location, and we say, potentially with modulars, or not, could fly. You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting nods over here,
Like, we
good.
know that gym and the classrooms are gonna be gone.
Yeah,
But
right, and it's
we could
acknowledging that we
look at it
may or may not need
and
costs
say
for
we
modulars.
might not need that,
Yeah,
depending on
Yeah,
numbers,
yeah.
when that comes around.
yeah. I mean, I get there's cost difference between the two, the orientations, right? I think we see a number of really positives of change in orientation, which is why we presented it to you all, and just maybe a reminder of that. South-facing entries cannot be understated of the difference of welcoming, let alone snow melt, and things like that, very practical as well. But certainly, we heard more than once sort of the concern of a school in the woods, and sort of this feeling like you not really know when you're arriving, and sort of how it is now, it's a little windy, which some people might find charming, others find a little disconcerting, because you don't feel that you're really getting someplace or it's welcoming. And we think between the fact that we're going to modify the road layout and also need to be doing some clearing for the septic, you're starting to open up the site. And when we had that first layout, you really were still sort of arriving at the back end, kind of end of a classroom wing, not very welcoming, like, ta-da, there's the entrance, I know where I'm going. And so, these multiple things, I mean, again, I get the dollar amount difference, but I think that it's more of what you as a community end up with, what you have in the end, will want to feel like it was designed specifically for that site and it makes perfect sense, not feel like it was put in around something. And I think that will be felt. I think that the appreciation of, arriving and seeing the play, having that play open for security, and things aren't kind of behind a building or any of that kind of feel, will make the overall campus feel that much more welcoming and sort of purpose-built, like it was meant to be there when all is said and done. I mean, I'm talking a lot of maybe gibberishy words, but
And you're
it's
referencing option A, right?
the difference between just doing, the prime, the base one, versus A, B, or C shape location on site. That difference is, I think, very impactful overall. And your potentials are great to hear, and I think that, it could be the signing on to the location and, narrated in a way in the report that says, it may need modulars, the community understands that, we are going to work towards not needing modulars. Something along those lines would be acceptable to MSBA.
So based on all this, does anyone care to make a motion? And if you want to narrow it down by deleting one of them and get that off the table, that's fine too. You don't have to if we have support for one that gets...
I'll make a motion to proceed with option 17C.
Second.
So a motion made on 17C, 2 phases, no modular. Any questions, discussion on that? Chris?
Are there any other differences between 17 and 17C besides the orientation? Okay.
Phasing. Well,
Yeah.
Right.
Cost.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Schedule.
sorry. Yes.
All equal, yeah.
Those two things, yeah.
Educational planning would be the same, spaces would be the same.
Yeah.
You get the same amount of classrooms, same amount of support spaces, all that stuff.
And again, we're still, schematic design is still coming up next. So right now, we're narrowing in on that big picture, like, where is my building mass going? Really getting into it with the educators and talking about adjacencies and exact locations of spaces is still yet to come and to be
Keep going.
refined.
Yeah, there are a lot of decisions that you need to make moving forward into that next phase.
In terms of the orientation between the two options, can you just do that again? Sorry.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to
See?
7 to play it through.
Base isn't. What's the base?
So so when we talk about.
But this
the
is a
base,
different
it's
footprint. This is the
different-
pre-K4, but location-wise.
Yeah,
That's where it's.
as opposed
Kind of coming
to,
around, exactly.
Okay.
looking at, again,
So I heard C, so go back to C.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments on the motion?
in terms of cost, I know there are estimates now, is there possibilities of that number getting potentially closer? Because I know there's obviously a difference between 17 and 17C.
You mean the cost difference from 17 to 17C?
Correct.
I think a lot of it has to do with the phasing of the project.
But I think is it fair to say the numbers where we are, again, I always come with the caveat, we're in feasibility, these are feasibility study numbers that will then, again, be more refined as we go into schematic design and do estimates there.
Yeah, so a lot of the cost it's the phase cost, and then it's the escalation to build that second part of the building at a later period, so you gotta increase it, and then it depends how the contractor sees it. If they can buy it out all at the beginning, you may, but that's way down the road at bidding time, so we have to estimate for that cost escalating, just like we're estimating for all costs escalating across as the project goes on.
But I think the approach, I'm not sure if this is where Art was going, but the approach of selecting this one and then making any other educational moves that would allow it to revert back to a one-phase, there's some savings there. Right,
I'm
so-
not saying it's not a part of the.
Right, it's not off the
If it's
table.
gonna save that much money, then I think we can make things work. I mean, if it's that or modulars,
Right, which
Saving
we
millions of
hear
dollars,
that we
yes.
don't want to do, absolutely, understood.
Maybe to reiterate that, so if a 17C motion happened, there is still potential down the line in schematic design, discussions to happen that could move back to a one-phase project.
Right.
All right, seeing no additional questions or comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of 17 prime C as a siting and phasing option, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Unanimous vote. Thank you. You want to congratulate yourselves. A lot of work to get to this point.
Yes. Yes, thank you to everyone for your comments and discussion this evening.
Very helpful.
Stephanie, you want to just click through? I think we
Yep,
have just a couple.
budget.
We have a couple straggler slides. House cleaning. Don't worry, there's no update. I'll be quick. I'll talk fast.
So as a
too.
result, this cash flow slide is out the window.
No, very simple. No update to the invoices, so no update to the cash flow. You click forward to the schedule. We've all seen this now every meeting, so we know where we're at. PSR, May 1st. That should be the other thing we should talk about if we want
We
to
need to
submit
vote.
PSR, yeah.
We need to vote for that.
Yeah. So I guess let me just finish up here, and then we can do that one. So that'll go in on May 1st. Then key dates are, I don't think we're going to have the 4/22 meeting at this point.
Correct. No meeting on April 22nd. We would plan to, we should meet, we don't have any formally scheduled at this point, but should we meet plan to meet the second Tuesday in May, or hold that off till the 4th?
Let's see. I think we could plan on meeting just as a group for an update about the PSR, right, at that point?
The second week is the 6th.
So that would be,
Which have
so
gone
I'm
in on
looking
the
at May
Thursday before.
13th.
Not sure which one's.
Yeah, no, there won't be that much, right? So
Yeah,
that would be,
maybe the 20th.
yeah, maybe the 20th, because that would be the 6th, right? Maybe we want to
No,
schedule.
2nd and 4th is our normal.
Oh, 13th.
Oh, 13th, yeah.
13th
Yeah,
and
you're right,
27th,
13th,
so
yeah. 13th
we've been
works.
defaulting to the 4th if business doesn't require us to have 2 meetings, so that would be.
Yeah.
we
That would
just-
give us from the 1st to the 13th to get the work plan and stuff ready to present for schematic design. So 13th works, I think.
So you wanted to do the 13th? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Is 13th all right for folks?
Because Gary was saying that
There
this
was a
second
music,
and the
chorus
yeah,
concert.
Second,
here.
oh, yeah, 13th, yeah.
okay, you got a second.
Gary, the only thing to keep in mind, town meeting is the 12th, so hopefully it goes one night, but if it goes 2 nights, it would.
Oh, that's a good point. Personally, I guess I would rather just go back to our, if there's no pressing need for us to do business in 2 meetings in the month, I'd rather go back to the default, which is the 4th Tuesday of the month.
So that's the 27th.
I would
Which is
rather
the
do
day
it.
after Memorial Day, so people away Memorial Day weekend.
Well, Tuesday, everyone's Thursday.
How about we keep it on the 13th, and everybody here agrees that we have one night of town meeting?
Make that
Talk
happen.
to our moderator and tell him we will have one night at town meeting.
Mark, that 17th, or the 27th is senior awards.
I was just
Oh, all
gonna
right.
say something else, I knew.
It's always something.
All right, I guess we're back to the 13th. We're going to be conflicting with something, so, I mean, if town meeting spills over, we'll have to cancel it at the last minute, but, because we can't conflict with that.
Okay. So plan for the 13th?
Yes.
Okay. That's all we had for schedule updates, so if you want to
All right,
circle
then-
back.
Yeah, so that we need the formality of a vote to proceed with the submittal based on your previous votes, to submit the preferred schematic report to the MSBA in time for their May 1st, 2025 deadline.
So that's option 17C, is that what you're referring to?
That's
Prime, yeah.
17 prime C for K through 6.
So motion to submit?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second? All those in favor? Aye. And again, thank you, everybody. It's been a long road to get to this point.